Undercover boss orders eggs, freezes when waitress confesses she's working hungry. Not every sign of trouble is in the report. Some things only come out when the person in charge is willing to quietly sit down. 5:58 a.m. It was still a bit chilly, with a thin layer of mist on the front glass of Sunrise Diner, the branch on the outskirts. The yellow lights inside had just turned on, reflecting softly as if inviting the first customers of the day. Everything seemed to be in order. Internal reports recorded stable revenue. No formal complaints had been filed. The morning shift manager checked that all staff were present, but Michael Carter, 50 years old, founding CEO of the Sunrise Diner chain, never relied solely on pretty numbers. Recently, he had received a few notes from the independent audit team. A few wait staff had quit abruptly with no clear reason. A few anonymous remarks mentioned tips not reaching the rightful hands. Michael decided not to announce his visit. No meetings, no camera crew. That morning, he wore a light-colored shirt and a low baseball cap, stepping into the branch like a polite, quiet stranger. He chose a table by the window, ordered a soft-boiled egg, toast, and a black coffee, no sugar. Not to check the quality of the food, but to observe the atmosphere, how the staff moved, who was truly serving, and whether something was being hidden behind that stable report. Michael didn't come for breakfast. He came to see, was someone skipping breakfast because the system he built no longer saw them? There are truths that don't show up in reports, but in a quiet word at a time when no one intends for it to be heard. Jenny appeared just a few minutes after Michael settled in. She was about 20, hair tied up high, moving briskly, with a small smile as she placed the menu on the table. "Good morning, sir." "Lovely day today," she said politely, but her eyes had a quietness to them that was different than usual. Michael ordered the soft-boiled egg, toast, and black coffee. He didn't ask much, just watched. She worked quickly, not clumsy. Every step was careful, as if she was trying not to cause any trouble for anyone. When she brought the dish, Jenny set it down as lightly as if she was afraid of spilling even a sound. Michael gave a polite smile and asked a question that seemed harmless. "Mornings like this must be a bit less stressful, right?" Jenny paused for a moment. She looked down at the edge of the tray, then shook her head slightly. "To be honest, I haven't eaten anything since last night. Lately, I don't dare buy breakfast anymore. Every penny has to be counted." Her voice was soft, almost swallowed up by the noise of the coffee machine and the customers placing orders. But to Michael, that sentence felt like a crack shooting straight through the glass that had once seemed flawless in the system he had built. He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at the young woman, who was now pouring water for the next table, with a gaze that was both surprised and unsettled. Because if someone works hard, serves correctly, and still has to skip meals because they can't afford breakfast, then something is very wrong. Not wrong from individual behavior, but wrong from the way a system tracks hours but fails to capture what they're really losing. Not everyone needs to be recognized with words, but if even their name doesn't show up, then what's left to hold on to? Michael set his coffee cup down again, quietly observing. Jenny didn't stop moving. She bent down to pick up a fallen napkin at table 3, turned around to bring extra sugar to table 6. Cleared dirty trays, then went straight back to the counter for new orders. Every step of hers was like a precise movement in the machine, only the machine didn't record her name. On the POS screen, after each customer transaction, Michael always saw the same name pop up, Marcus L. The man behind the counter, crisp white shirt, neatly combed hair, nodded perfunctorily every time a customer came in. But he didn't leave the counter, didn't pour water, didn't take orders, didn't carry trays. And every tip transaction through the card was attached to his name. 22325 tip, Marcus L. Table 5C.OC tip, Marcus L. Table 6, 2.75 tip, Marcus L. "No, Jenny." At the end of the morning, Michael pretended to stand up and walk to the back. He found Jenny refilling the water in a small, cramped break room and asked softly, "Do you remember all the tables you served?" Jenny smiled lightly, then took a small notebook out of her apron pocket. Soft cover, some ink stains, corners of pages curled. "I don't have an ID in the POS system. Only the people at the counter have the right to process transactions, but I write everything down to remember what I actually did." Michael flipped through a few pages. Neat handwriting, recording each hour, each table, each tip amount. 7:38, table 1, $2.5. 8:19, Table 4, $3.75. $8.57. Table 6, $4. Puz record, Marcus. On the last page, a red ink line underlined. Total, 348 to 105 is 3 weeks. No complaints, no request for help. Just a small notebook, kept as silent evidence that she had been here, she had served, and she deserved to be recognized. Michael clenched his fist slightly, not because of the money, but because he realized this wasn't just a technical loophole. It was a moral gap, where the person who actually did the work was being hidden legally. Michael stayed a bit longer in the break room, his eyes fixed on the little notebook. On the very last page, next to the total $348.25, there was a faint note in pencil. It's not about the money, it's to remember that I really tried. That simple sentence more complete than any formal complaint. A small scrap of paper fell out from between the notebook pages. It was an old receipt, date faded, with a few hurried lines on the back. Table 7. I'm sorry it was late, but the customer still smiled. First time this week, someone called me the sweet waitress. Hey, Jew. Michael folded the paper like a person who had just found a long-lost piece in the puzzle of the system he'd once been so proud of. He wasn't easily moved. But this time, something cut deep. Not because of the notebook, but because Jenny, though unrecognized by the system, was still holding on to the best part of hospitality, constantly striving to make others feel comfortable. When he stood up to leave the break room, Jenny bowed her head slightly. I'm not going to file a complaint or make a fuss. I just want, if I quit tomorrow, to remember that I was here, not to be forgotten from the start. Michael paused at the door. He didn't say, I'll fix everything. He didn't promise, we'll compensate. Instead, he simply asked, do you think other people are writing it down too? Jenny looked at him, slowly nodded. I think I'm not the only one. Ember one. Michael walked away, more certain than any report from HR. The problem wasn't the notebook. It was the fact that they needed a notebook just to exist. And that's something no transparent system should ever allow. Not everyone who speaks up is right, but when they are, they deserve to be named. 9:16 a.m., 1 week later. The Sunrise Diner branch was as busy as every morning. The coffee machine hummed softly. The clinking of dishes rang steady. Marcus stood behind the counter still in his white shirt, neatly pressed, holding the scanner as if the whole diner revolved around him. The manager men's, Renoir, signing off on orders in the back, eyes glued to her clipboard, headphones in, not bothering to look up. The door swung open. Michael Carter walked in. No disguise, no pretense. His eyes swept the diner lightly, then stopped at the POS system. Give me a few minutes of access to the system. Brief pause. Marcus frowned, about to speak but too late. Michael plugged a USB into the screen. The video started playing immediately. First clip. Jenny lowered her head, placed the pancake on table 5. She poured more water, nodded a thank you as the customer handed over a card. A few seconds later, Marcus stepped up to the machine, pressed to confirm. The POS screen showed A table 5 save .25 tip Marcus L. Next clip. The break room camera. Jenny opened her bag, took out a small wrinkled sandwich, the only breakfast she'd had after nearly 5 hours of work. Then the audio recording. Miss Rena's voice, cold and indifferent. No ID, no tip. That's the rule. The whole diner fell silent. Jenny, carrying a tray out to a table, froze mid-step. A few customers looked up from their food. Staff scattered in the kitchen looked at each other as if for the first time seeing the name of the truth displayed in broad daylight. Michael walked toward the counter. His voice didn't need to be loud because by then, the entire diner was holding its breath. I don't need a report to see what's wrong. I just need a camera and a server who keeps doing the right thing even when the system has failed. He turned to Marcus. You didn't serve, but you took all the rewards. You never stepped onto the floor, but you took all the thanks. Then he looked at Miss Rena. And you, the one given the authority to uphold, fairness used it to exclude those who didn't have an ID. A single nod. 2 envelopes from the HR department were immediately delivered. Marcus Langley, contract terminated, effective immediately. Rena Douglas, management rights revoked, full shift investigation initiated. Michael turned back to the POS machine and plugged in a small device. The screen lit up with a clear message. Tip system live, by server vertical bar, verified vertical bar public viewing. He turned to all the staff and customers in the restaurant. Starting today, Every tip will be recorded under the actual server's name, displayed live behind the counter in real time. No one will be hidden anymore. No one will have to write down their own name to prove what they deserve. I dawn. Jenny still stood there, hand gripping the edge of her tray, eyes barely believing what had just happened. Michael simply nodded. Thank you for not disappearing, even when the entire system once tried to make that happen. Morning light shone through the window, casting the words, "Tip System Live," across the table where Michael once sat. The truth doesn't need a signboard. It just needs to be displayed at the right time. And with the right name, the atmosphere in the diner hadn't yet returned to normal. A young staff member near the kitchen name tag reading Kyle quietly removed his apron, then walked over to Jenny. He placed a hand on her shoulder and said softly, just enough for the two of them to hear, "Thank you. I also used to think no one would dare to speak up." Jenny turned, about to reply, when an older customer she had served that morning stood up and walked to the counter. He handed Michael a receipt and pointed to the tip line. The server who helped me was her. Then he turned to Marcus, who stood motionless, his confidence gone. "And you? You just took the money?" A moment later, several other customers did the same. Some revisited their receipts, others pointed to the POS screen and asked, "How can I be sure the person who served me actually gets the tip?" Michael didn't dodge the question. He stepped to the center of the counter and spoke clearly. "We've installed a system that identifies based on the shift. Every transaction will now display the actual server's ID. No one can enter it for them, and no one will lose their name just for being in the wrong place." And greed. He turned toward the group of employees gathered by the kitchen. "If you've ever felt like Jenny, if you've ever felt like you were forgotten, then I want you to know, from this moment forward, Sunrise Diner is starting over by calling the right name for the right person." A scattered applause started, then grew. It wasn't applause for a boss solving the problem. I summon. It was for a system being rewritten thanks to a server who never asked for anything for herself, except for her name to be recorded properly. Jenny clutched her notebook in her hands, then gently stepped toward the counter, as if she finally no longer had to stand on the border between present and invisible. And as the sunlight grew brighter, shining directly onto the words, "Tip System Live" on the screen, someone whispered, "Finally, decency has a place to stand." Fairness doesn't need a slogan. It just needs to be implemented every day by those who once felt forgotten. 1 month later, Sunrise Diner still opened at 6 a.m. Still the sound of spoons tapping on porcelain mugs. Still the soft light falling on tabletops aged by time. But the heartbeat inside the diner had changed. Quieter, steadier. Behind the counter, the POS screen displayed every transaction clearly. Tip status, verified vertical bar by name, vertical bar live. 746, table 3, $2. 75, Kayla. 8, table 6, 350, Dean. 8, table 844, Liza. No more hidden names, no more approved ID. Just the server saying their names appearing exactly when they deserved it. And Jenny? She no longer carried a tray weaving between tables. Today, she stood in a small meeting room at branch number 47, facing 6 newly hired staff members. No slides, no charts. Just an old notebook, its cover faded with time. She opened to the page with the familiar red ink line, total 348. 25, 3 weeks. She spoke softly. "This was the amount I once lost. But the biggest regret wasn't the money. It was having to write it down just to remember that I deserved it." She put the notebook down, eyes steady. "If one day the system doesn't call your name, make your actions so clear that it has to correct itself." Another morning at the very same branch where it all began. Michael returned. No coat, no USB. Just a customer ordering a boiled egg and black coffee. Before he left, he quietly placed under the plate a neatly folded $20 bill and a small handwritten note, "Thank you for keeping what's right, even when it meant you couldn't live fully." Jenny found the note after her shift. She folded it, placing it in the old notebook, just as she had kept things no one saw, but she never forgot. 1 week later, on Sunrise Diner's internal forum, a quiet post appeared, with no caption, no tags, a photo of an old notebook page with a faint, slanted line of ink. 812, table 6, tip $3.5, POS recorded, Marcus. Attached was a new screenshot of the system. O table 6, 350. Jenny. Below, A series of quiet comments appeared from other branches. I used to jot things down by hand too, but I never thought the day would come when the system would do it for me. And your notebook paginao. It's the guiding star for the entire training department. It's not because you spoke up. It's because you didn't stay silent. Jenny didn't reply. But that night, she carefully stuck a small piece of paper onto the cover of her old notebook. Not to record the money I lost, but to teach what must never be repeated. And Micheltha next morning at a meeting with the regional branch managers in the East, he placed a printout of Jenny's notebook on the table and spoke slowly. The POS system will continue to update. But the first thing that needs updating is how we see the people who actually work. No one objected, no vote was needed. And a few days later, at another Sunrise diner, hundreds of miles from where the story began, young server found in their tip tray a small note. Thank you for not letting silence win. Today's system exists because of people like you. There are some things that are right not because they're in the rule book. There are some acts of kindness that don't wait their turn. True fairness doesn't need to be demanded. It needs to be built from every small action by those who keep doing right, even when the system has yet to fix itself. Because sometimes to change a system, you just need one person who dares to pick up a pen and start recording what everyone else had grown used to forgetting.